Good evening, students. Today we are going to start our general knowledge class. Let us start with a silent prayer. Okay. General knowledge is important to us since it helps us to understand our surroundings. Our surroundings consist of politics, sports, cinema, history, etc. So, now you must have understood that general knowledge touches almost all subjects that we are learning in school. So, my dear students, let us start this general knowledge class with numbers. Numbers are the basics for any subjects, let it be science, maths, or history. Here in this chapter, we will have a fun with numbers. Also, we will learn the different uses of numbers. Chapter 1 Fun with Numbers. Numbers are needed to show time, days, to count, and to give marks. Here in this chapter, we are going to see some uses of numbers. Filling the boxes by choosing the right options from the brackets. First question. An hour has dash minutes, 60 or 70. Now you can see the clock. Look at the numbers and hands in the clock. When the big hands goes a full round, it becomes 1 hour. So 1 hour is 60 minutes. How many minutes are there in 1 hour? 60 minutes. You got it? Okay. Next question. There are dash days in a week. 7, 8. How many days are there in a week? Do you know? You must have learned the names of days. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday. So there are how many days in a week? 7 days. Okay. Next question, third. A scorpion has dash legs, 8 or 9. Scorpion എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ നിങ്ങൾക്കറിയാം തേളാണ് ആ സാധനം. നോക്കിക്കേ പിക്ചർ കണ്ടോ? A scorpion has 8 legs. Do you know any other insect that has 8 legs? Spider. You have seen spider in your house? Okay. Next question, fourth question. There are dash hands in a clock, 3 or 5. In the first question, I have shown you the picture of a clock. So, how many hands in a clock? 3 hands. Okay. Fifth question. There are dash sides in a square, 4 or 6. Look at the square in the picture and count the sides. So, there are how many sides in a square? 4 sides. Okay. Sixth question. A volleyball team has dash players, 5 or 6. Look at the video of the players playing volleyball. There are 2 teams. One has how many players? Count them. 6 players. Okay. Next question, seventh question. An adult human has dash teeth, 32 or 30. See the picture. An adult human has 32 teeth. Eighth question. There are usually dash blades in a fan, 3 or 10. Everyone has a fan there in their house. Look at the fan. How many blades are there, children? Okay, 3 blades. Ninth question. The story of Snow White has dash dwarfs in it. 4, 7. This question is from a fairy tale story. So, what is a fairy tale story? It's an imaginary story. എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ തികച്ചും ഒരു സാങ്കല്പിക കഥയാണ്. I am sending a video of this story. Hear the story carefully and write the answers.
Hey Peter, Anna, it's raining heavily. Come inside.
No, Mama, we want to play.
And what about a story?
Yay! We are coming! Mama, which story are you going to tell?
Come, sit with me. I'm going to tell you the story named Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. It was the middle of winter. The snow fell softly as a beautiful queen sat sewing by a window. As she gazed out at the wintry scene and watched a blackbird perching on a snow-covered branch, she pricked her finger with her needle. "How I wish I had a daughter with skin as white as the snow, lips as red as my blood, and hair as black as a blackbird," she thought. Not long afterwards, the queen did indeed have a pretty baby girl who was just like the one she had wished for. The queen called her daughter Snow White. Sadly, the queen died soon after Snow White was born, and Snow White's father, the king, married again. His new queen was very beautiful but vain. Every day she would go to her magic mirror and say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror would reply,
"You, O Queen, are the fairest one of all."
Then the queen would smile because she knew that the mirror always spoke the truth. The years passed, and Snow White grew into a beautiful girl. One day, the queen looked in the magic mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And this time the mirror replied,
"You are fair, O Queen, it's true, but Snow White is fairer now than you."
The queen was so angry and jealous that she decided Snow White must die at once. She sent for her huntsman and told him to take Snow White deep into the forest and kill her. He must then bring back her heart to prove she was dead. The huntsman led Snow White deep into the forest and drew his knife. Snow White fell to her knees and begged him to spare her life. The huntsman was very sad. Like all the royal servants, he loved Snow White, yet he did not dare disobey the queen. But when he saw Snow White crying, he took pity on her.
"I cannot kill you,
He said,
but I cannot take you back either. I will leave you here, but you must promise never to return home."
Snow White agreed. So the huntsman left her and returned to the palace. On the way, he killed a deer and cut out its heart. He took this to the queen and pretended it was Snow White's heart. Poor Snow White wandered through the forest feeling tired, lonely, and very hungry. At last she reached a clearing and saw a little house. She tapped on the door, and when there was no answer, she went inside. There she saw a long, low table laid with 7 plates. There were 7 little cups, 7 little knives and forks, and 7 little bowls. Snow White was so hungry that she sat down and took some bread and cheese and drank a cup of milk. Then she went upstairs and found a room with 7 little beds. She found one that was comfortable, snuggled into it, and fell sound asleep. Now, the cottage was the home of 7 dwarfs. Every day they went to a nearby mine and dug for diamonds. When night came, they returned home carrying their shovels, pickaxes, and bags of jewels. When they arrived home on this particular night, they saw at once that someone had been in their house and eaten some of their food. When they went upstairs, they straightway saw Snow White asleep. "Who can this beautiful girl be?" they asked each other in amazement. When Snow White woke up, she told them her story. The dwarfs felt so sorry for her that they invited her to stay with them and be their housekeeper. But they warned her that she must never open the door to anyone while they were away at the mine, in case the wicked queen found out she was alive and came to kill her. Snow White stayed with the dwarfs. She was very happy looking after them, and before long she forgot all about the wicked queen. The queen, meanwhile, believing Snow White to be dead, had not bothered to ask her magic mirror her usual question, but one day, as she stood combing her hair, the queen idly asked her mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror promptly replied,
You, O Queen, are fair, it's true, but Snow White is fairer far than you. Deep within the greenwood shade, Snow White with dwarfs her home has made.
The queen was furious, and realizing that the huntsman had tricked her, she decided to kill Snow White herself. She disguised herself as an old peddler woman and made her way to the dwarf's cottage. There she found Snow White sitting by the window. "Would you like to buy a pretty comb for your hair?" asked the queen in her sweetest tone of voice. Snow White quite forgot the dwarf's warning and ran to open the door. The queen showed her a beautiful comb made of tortoise shell and gold. "Let me comb your hair," offered the queen, and she drew the comb through Snow White's long, silky hair. But the comb had been dipped in deadly poison, and when the teeth grazed Snow White's scalp, she fell down as if dead. The queen ran off, laughing cunningly, leaving the comb in Snow White's hair. When the dwarfs returned from the mine, they found Snow White lying on the ground with the poisoned comb in her hair. They snatched it out, and as they did so, Snow White opened her eyes. When they heard what had happened, they told her that the peddler woman must have been the wicked queen in disguise, and begged her again never to open the door to strangers. The queen, back at her palace, rushed to her mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" When the mirror replied,
O Queen, your poison was in vain, for Snow White is alive again.
She was furious. Rushing to the cellar, she disguised herself once more, this time as a country woman with a basket of apples. On the top she placed one juicy apple, half of which she dipped in poison. The queen reached the dwarf's cottage just as Snow White was drawing water from the well. "Who will buy my beautiful tasty apples?" she called. Snow White, remembering the dwarf's warning, ran inside and locked the door. But then she thought that if she opened the window, nothing will happen. "Let me see your apples," she called, leaning out of the open window. "Taste this one, pretty lady, it's the best," said the queen sweetly, holding out the poisoned apple. Then, seeing Snow White hesitate, she cut the apple in half and ate the part she knew had no poison on it. Snow White took the other half, and no sooner had she taken a bite than she sank to the floor dead. The queen smiled, sure that this time the poison would work. She rushed home and spoke to her magic mirror again. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" This time the mirror replied,
You, O Queen, you are the fairest of them all.
The wicked queen smiled with satisfaction. When the dwarfs came home and found Snow White dead, they made a glass coffin and laid her in it. They put the coffin amongst the flowers in their garden and kept watch by it day and night. One day it happened that a prince came riding through the forest, and he saw the glass coffin in which Snow White lay. She looked so beautiful that he fell in love with her. He asked the dwarfs if he could take the coffin back to his castle. The dwarfs would not allow this, but they agreed to let the prince kiss Snow White. As the prince kissed Snow White, the piece of poisoned apple fell from her lips. Her eyes opened and she saw the handsome prince kneeling over her. She fell in love with him straight away. The dwarfs were overjoyed that she was alive once more, and even more delighted when the prince and Snow White agreed to marry. When the queen once again asked the mirror her favorite question, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" it replied,
You, O Queen, are the fair, it's true. But Queen Snow White is fairer still than you.
The queen smashed the magic mirror in her rage. The king, who had discovered how she had tried to kill his lovely daughter, Snow White, banished her from the land. Snow White said goodbye to the dwarfs and rode away with her handsome prince. They were married and lived happily ever after.